I've learned how to let go my preconceived notions of what I think a branding system or the next issue or the next event should look like. I will always say it's not just me, it's my team. I think it's really important that, especially in public, you are praising your team. You're telling people that it is not just me, because it's a nice soup of ideas that come from everybody else.
Welcome to This Is Your Job Now. We're incredibly excited to have you as the creative director for Fast Company and learn from you for the next few minutes to share your insights, your stories, and even maybe a little of your potholes, because we love to glean from those, like the uh-ohs. So first of all, just thank you so much for taking
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
So for sake of time, and we know the attention span of our listeners is already past the point, right?
Yeah.
Let's get right in and talk about the creativity and business of work, that it's moving at lightning speed. If you take a minute and talk about the future of work with everything going on that I don't need to list. And we started with the big question about how are you doing your job? How are you getting up on a Monday morning and moving forward with the creativity that the world demands today?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important context too for listeners to know what I do as a creative director, and I won't go into a 10-minute monologue about that. But as a creative director of Fast Company, I oversee design and photo teams. So we're responsible for all the visuals for the brand. So from the magazine to our event like the Innovation Festival to our own podcast, the branding of those. I want to emphasize that we have people creating all of our artwork. So I think that the biggest tension, whether or not you have creative people or AI creating the work, right? So I stress that because, I like to make sure that the individuality of all of the creatives come through in what Fast Company does. The way that I've built that into my leadership style is not being too restrictive in, how a designer might want to come up with a look for our next podcast, or how, our next innovation festival branding will look. It's giving my designers and my photo directors autonomy to create a look that's important to them, because in the context of leadership in 2025 and creativity and beyond, it's really important to let the individuals come up with their own looks that feel special to them, because the risk that we face with overusing AI is that everything can look the same. The general term for that is AI slop, right? But I like to embrace the imperfection and the humanity in people's work and what they do. And, something I've learned in my years, and, you mentioned potholes in my career, and we could talk about that too, is I've learned how to let go or put aside my preconceived notions of what I think a branding system or the next issue or the next event should look like.
So, I have a list of questions that I think I'll just rip up because you just opened up more interesting conversation. I always like listeners to say, I have a takeaway. So the first takeaway there to me which is huge, is that it sounds to me like somebody may have a better idea than you. That somebody
all the time.
Yeah. So that's a huge, right? An ego, check the ego.
When I started, it was the creative director was the sole genius behind the entire thing. Even at our innovation festival 2 weeks ago, people were constantly coming up to me and saying, oh, you do such a great job with Fast Company. And I will always say, it's not just me, it's my team. And that's not just me, doing that kind of generic leader move. It really is my team. And I think it's really important that, especially in public, you are praising your team. You're telling people that it is not just me, because it really is just it's a nice soup of ideas that come from everybody else too.
Many of our listeners aren't blessed enough to have a creative director. They're it. They're the CEOs, the CFOs, everything, right? They're the creative directors. So our listeners are saying, I want to be like Mike. I aspire. But that's okay. They can learn a lot from you, and you've had an amazing career. And the humility, which I always think is so interesting, because some leaders have. Interviewed so many. Some are really, truly very humble about the experience, and others are not. I think one of the toughest questions for a minute, up for a little role play here?
Sure, let's do it.
I think one of the hardest things that people are facing today, leaders are facing today, is that person on the team that says, I'm exhausted from change. I just want to do it the way we did last time. And I've given you my best ideas, Mike. I'm done. And I really feel like we shouldn't keep changing.
Now, in the context of what I do when it's creativity, is I might be taking a step back and outlining for them why we're changing things the way they are. And then showing them or like sharing a story with them on like how that change might help their creativity. So I can give you a good example of that too, is when I started at Fast Company over 7 years ago, their way of design was very structured, right? And which made sense. Like when you, like, I think about structure, I think about like technology, and it like visually it kind of made sense, but I wanted to kind of embrace a little bit of like chaos in our creativity and like going back to this idea of like having a brand without having a brand, right? So like I wanted to shake up the way we would approach things. And I had a lot of people here that had been doing things the same way for a long period of time. They were saying things like, I don't want to change the way things are, or maybe it was just implied in mannerisms, how many versions of a design they had shared. But over time, what happened was, as I helped guide people to like, try these new design solutions, I could see that people started to feel more energized. The most important thing is to take a step and explain why this change is happening. If a situation sucks, if you say like, I know this sucks and I know you don't like it, but like, because it shows that you're human and that it's a real situation and that you're not just a cyborg delivering any kind of like orders. Help them see and understand how it's going to benefit them. And a quick thing I can always say to a team member is like, this will be great in your portfolio. Right? Like, because as creatives, like,
there's a little buy-in there.
There's some buy-in. There's going to be work that they do that we all do as creatives. That's great for our portfolio. And then there's going to be work that like, we're like, this is crap. Right. And so it's to call it what it is.
Very inspirational, right? I mean, you clearly come across as a really nice guy.
Thanks.
I've seen you present. You come across with hundreds of people. It's your worst day. And it has to happen. And one of the things that we really are focusing on now is, how do you handle that on your day where you're off? It's just not your best day. What suggestions do you have for yourself and as a leader?
I have a weekly one-on-one with my boss, and he might ask me, and this has happened in the past, where, how's the cover going? And like we're 2 weeks from deadline. We've chosen a photo for the cover. I now need to design it and like basically have that burst of creativity that like, makes a Fast Company cover what it is. So there are times when my boss asks me and I'll just tell him like, I'm not feeling inspired. The quote unquote muse hasn't hit me yet, but like I will get it done. And I think that it's like he inspires me to be honest with him. And I inspire my team to be honest with me when I'll just ask, how are you? Having that kind of dialogue and honesty with your boss and your leader is really important. And it's like, I feel comfortable saying to my boss, like, it's not happening. It's not happening right now. Because I think that shows confidence in saying it's not happening right now.
We spend a lot of time with this big discussion. You're describing a very confident leader, as you yourself use that word, right?
Yep.
Where does it come from?
You mentioned earlier, and I'm very flattered, you said like, I'm, a good public speaker. And I wasn't always a good public speaker. I was a terrible public speaker when I was in my 20s. You have to bomb through a little bit. Like you have to earn confidence. You don't just like, people can be cocky, right? And that's not earned, that's faking it, but you have to earn confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think in my earlier years as a designer and even as a creative director, I was cocky and I fell on my face because of it. 7 years later, where like I will start a project and say like, what's inspiring you? What's your idea? But I know that at the end of the day, like we'll create something great because my team will be inspired. Every individual wants to put their fingerprints on something. We all want to be involved with something. And I know that like, through the decisions I make, when I'm working with my team on whatever their vision is on something, my fingerprint will come through at the end of the day, right? But it's like having trust in that'll happen.
It confidence, right? You just exude it. So what's the thing you wish that leaders would do more of? What's the one thing you've learned when you're at the leaders' table and you're like, why don't these people just fill in the blank?
I wish leaders, especially when you start a job, and I've tried to do this, especially with younger team members, is ask, where do you want your next job to be? Like, to be honest about, like, we all know you don't plan to be here forever, right? But like, if we can be honest about that, and what kind of work do you want to get, what experience do you want to get out of the job, creates a little bit of a ladder and a growth plan, but like a very conversational, honest growth plan, not like, what are my KPIs for the next 6 months? Like, like having that conversation about where do you want to be? For example, like we have a design fellowship here at Fast Company. So it's basically you graduate college, you join us for a year, and I will help you get your first job after Fast Company. And I've written a curriculum for that and like a syllabus for that. And I have my current design fellow who's 3 months in now. My last one-on-one with her last week, I asked her just now write your resume experience from Fast Company, even though you're just 3 months in, because what we can do from that is we can look at that and see what experience do you have and what experience do you need. Right. So it becomes, a documentation of what you've done, but it also becomes almost like a creative, like manifestation exercise where you could say, okay, like I want to do branding for the next Fast Company podcast.
I love it.
Or like, I want to help you, Mike, with like the next script for the next video that you're working on.
It's like what I do with my kids, Mike. I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, what kind of mother am I going to be at this next phase of their life? Right. Like, where am I taking the journey?
Right.
So you've been incredibly gracious and generous with your time. I think I'm going to end with the hardest question, though.
Oh, okay.
One of the themes we've been looking about that has changed in leadership over my 35 years of being in is really this mission and passion, right? The connection to what we do for a living. Like, what does it matter? How are we fixing the world? And do leaders feel that burden? Is that important to you? Is it important to you to be connected to a mission and passion? Is it something you think leaders should take on, or do you think that it's irrelevant? You should just do your job.
I can't say that every leader should be purpose driven. I will say that I am purpose driven. I wasn't always purpose driven. When I got into this industry 20 something years ago, meaning this graphic design industry, I just like wanted to make cool looking things, right? I'm totally serious. Like,
very real.
I loved drawing comics as a kid. I wasn't the brightest high school student. My parents' only mandate was you have to go to college because college teaches you how to learn, right? And that was the only thing. And it was really great advice, and I'm going to tie it to what I'm going to say in a minute. But they said college teaches you how to learn, and it made me a forever student. I signed a contract to teach college in February 2020. And I was so excited to teach in person because like my mom is a retired high school teacher. And if you have a teacher, like, especially if one of your parents are a teacher, they always want you to teach to some degree.
For sure.
I signed that contract, March 2020 pandemic. And then I had to learn how to teach like over Zoom, basically. And it changed my perspective on like purpose, where like I saw that, okay, my students now who don't even want to turn their cameras on Zoom are feeling burnt out. They're telling me how they don't feel creative. Like when I was in college, I never would have told a professor, hey, I don't feel creative today, right? But that's where I kind of started to feel, okay, sense of purpose, where my role is not just to help people like make things look cool like I wanted to do 20 something years ago. It's to help people feel more creative because that's where like they want to like get up every single day and do the thing that they do. So like that's what inspired me to like write my book, Creative Endurance. That's what inspired me to continue to want to teach. And if I can energize people to be more creative, my team at Fast Company will do better work.
Mike, thank you. I can tell you, would you like to know my takeaway from today?
Sure.
I love the fact that when I'm listening to you, and I felt it when I heard you speak, and we talked about you behind your back, of course, as we the workshop, and had attended, as you know, so many workshops. You go boom, 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 because that's the way it is. I think the takeaway, and even more now of hearing you, is if we could create leaders who are more honest.
Yeah, honesty is important. I think I probably get my honesty from growing up in Long Island. We were very, very direct with each other, for better or worse.
Right.
But yeah, honesty is a great
I think that is a huge story, and it's great to hear that people that are as incredibly successful as you have found that path, continuing to be honest.
Yeah.
So I particularly want to thank you. I know you don't have to be here today. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to our audience. Really want to thank you so much for sharing We're going to put a link to your bio and to your book. So really, thank you so much for taking the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy. This was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to This Is Your Job Now, produced by me, Kai. If this episode made you think or made you feel, we hope it also made you realize you don't have to figure this out all alone. Leadership today is about presence, not perfection. To learn more, follow Wendy Wollner on LinkedIn, subscribe to Balancing Life's Issues on YouTube, or stream the podcast wherever you listen. Because if you're leading people, this is your job now. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah.